Ah, no, 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 no. Hi everyone, I'm Roberta, TranslaStars social media manager, and I'm here today with Laura Navas. Hi Laura.
Hello, how are you doing? Hello,
I'm
everyone.
fine. Hi, how are you? I hope you're well.
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
And so Laura is a conference interpreter, and this is our first live interview. And we are going to explore how to become a conference interpreter. And so, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat or in the comments section. And if I don't know if you are ready, Laura, we can start.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's go. So here's my first question for you, which is actually two questions. So when did
Okay.
you decide to become a conference interpreter, and would you recommend your university?
Okay. Well, how did I start? It is a funny story because it's not it's not that I've always wanted to be a conference interpreter. It's not that I've always known what a conference interpreter is or does. Because when I was in school, I had to, like, sort of in the last years of school before university, you have to pick some subjects, and I chose chemistry, biology, maths. So it was kind of a last minute decision guided by destiny or the heart or whatever you want to call it. And I actually asked myself, what do I like? What am I good at? And I was like, okay, I love writing, so should I become a journalist? But I'm a very curious person. I'm not sure, but I love languages ever since I was a little kid. I loved hearing people speaking different languages. I went to the library with my dad, and I always asked him to take some, like, English books for me and read them out loud to me. And so I decided to study translation and interpreting. And then I was like, okay, let's give it a go. If I don't like it, maybe I can do another thing. And I started translation and interpreting, a 4-year degree. And I didn't get the chance to do much interpreting. because I was abroad, but I took some subjects and I was kind of interested, and I decided to take the exam to apply for a master's degree in conference interpreting. And I did, yeah, a 2 year master's degree. And what was the second question? Would I recommend my university? Of course, this is a yes. I did my master's degree in Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, and it was a very, very good experience. I think that yeah, I learned everything I know is because of that. Of course, afterwards, experience gives you everything, but yeah, I would definitely recommend my master's degree. Also, master's degree in conference interpreting are very tough. You need to be ready and love yourself a lot.
Yeah, I imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so after that, how did you get into the market and what services do you offer now?
So I graduated in pandemic, so I didn't start working in conference interpreting that many years ago. And yeah, everyone was like, there's no work in conference interpreting, you just have to do another thing, you just have to find yourself translations or whatever. And so everything was very uncertain because of COVID, and I decided to go to the north of Italy, and I started working in an agency. So I was doing translations, project management, but suddenly I received a call from one of my former teachers, and he told me, "Well, there's this assignment, and I don't know if you'd be interested." And I was like, "Of course, I'd be super interested." And yeah, I thought that was like a sign from the universe, like, okay, just stop, don't leave this job in the agency. You just have to become a freelance. Just you'll manage, you'll find your own clients. So yeah, I did this first assignment, and then I became a freelance, and work started popping up. And what was the second question? Sorry.
What services do you offer now?
Yeah, I offer like conference interpreting has consecutive and simultaneous, and it has bilateral too. So I offer those three, and I do translations, but mainly interpreting. And I have a project called the Interpreting Boutique, and we also offer like event organization and everything that has to do with a big multilingual event. We're there to provide all services for that.
So back to your first assignment, what was it about and where was it?
So I was still working in the agency in Italy, and I had the chance to do this one-time job because it was remote. Because with the pandemic, of course, everything was remote. Events were transformed. In, they were in a whole different dimension, and that allowed me to be able to take the assignment. So it was remotely. It was for the government of Catalonia, and it was an arts and crafts event. It was very nice. It was not an event that I had to prepare a lot, because it was just a conference in which people chit chatted about I do this, I'm doing bracelets, I'm doing I don't know, I'm painting. So I had to be there like chit chatting, and I was with my teacher. So it was very nice because I felt confident having my teacher with me, and it was nice.
So fast forward to today, or more or less last week, I heard that you interpreted for the King of Spain. Could you tell us more about it?
Well, yeah, I got hired for that, like for this congress, and I didn't actually know that the king was going to be there. I found out afterwards. So it was not someone telling me, okay, you're going to be interpreting for the king, do you take the job or not. Was more of okay, there's this congress about journalism, do you want to come? Okay, yes. And then I found out that the king was there, but at the end, he's just one speaker more. He's not a fast speaker. I'm mostly worried about fast speakers. I'm not worried about the fact that they're famous or they're not famous. Of course, it's an honor to be interpreting someone that so many people are listening to, but it's not about how famous the person is. Of course, you have this responsibility because lots of people are hearing what you have to say. Journalists are writing, people are putting the headphones on, and they rely on you giving conveying the message. But at the end, yeah, it was a very nice experience, of course. But yeah, one more speaker among others.
And nowadays, do you mostly work with agencies or direct clients? And how did you find your first clients?
Okay. So I work with agencies and I work with direct clients, and I try to be sort of an agency myself. I'm not an agency, of course, but at the end, when you start like having your own clients, you cannot manage all the work that you have, so you have to send people to work for you. So you kind of work as an agency because you have to provide a good service, a quality service for the client. So I am a client myself. I'm a service provider. I am a job seeker. I'm everything all in
Everything,
one.
yeah.
Yes, that's it. My first client, well, my first client was my teacher, as I was saying before, that called me for this assignment. But after that, I started a bit with like colleagues, basically, because when you start out in the market, you're the last person that arrived there. So if you start building yourself a network, you kind of count in colleagues to give you work sometime. And of course, this is a win-win situation because you're going to be able maybe one day to give them work back. And my first clients, I think, were those like contacts. I mean, one person wants I don't know, from university is doing a webinar, and you can do a nonprofit mm, assignment. So you start doing pro bonos sometimes, and you start knowing people. But afterwards, it's all about knocking in every door you can knock, like agencies, sending emails, being getting inspired by the people in LinkedIn, maybe sending messages to those people that you see that are in the market and working actively working. You can ask them for advice. Yeah, basically that's it.
So it's networking for you. Your key to success, more or less, is networking.
I think so. I think it's yeah, it's if whether you like it or not, this is the in conference interpreting it's all about networking. Yeah, that's it.
And on the technical side, are there any specific tools or programs that you use on a regular basis that you would recommend?
Well, when I'm working with direct clients, what I suggest them is to use Zoom for the meetings. And so I think it's important while being a conference interpreter, if you want to have your own clients, to have Zoom Business, because this allows you to have all the features for the booth arrangements. And yeah, I think that's really important. On the other hand, of course, if you're doing remote interpreting, you need a good quality headset. You need an Ethernet cable, those sort of things, a good microphone, good headset. And yeah, that's basically what I use.
And what about CPD? Which courses or events, conferences do you recommend?
So if you want to improve in your career, of course, you need to understand very well what you want to improve in. So I would recommend, for example, wise interpreting workshops, which is when you're an interpreter, you always need to keep on practicing and practicing. And there is this workshop that is organized by two to friends of mine, and it's in Valencia, and it's a very good way to keep on practicing your retour, which is interpreting into your non-native language, and you get feedback from people that are native. So I think that's very very interesting to give each other feedback in those type of workshops. If you want to work on your language, of course, if you want to become an expert in how to build good glossaries, of course you have to choose another workshop. And there are also some free practice tools, which are not courses exactly, not workshops, but that are very interesting practice groups, or speech repository, which is a speech repository basically from the European Commission. So you have speeches in lots of languages like English, French, Mandarin, whatever, and you just put your headsets on and you start interpreting. So that's very, very good practice. I still use it, even though I'm a conference interpreter. I still have a lot to learn, and I keep using that.
So, just a question that popped up in my mind. So, do you, when you're not working, are you used to train every day, more or less?
Yeah, in some sense, like an interpreter needs to keep the different languages you work with active all the time, all the time. So this means that you have to wake up in the morning and maybe listen to the news in different languages, like podcast or so whatever. Like if you're working with French and Italian and English, well, you have to listen every day to French, Italian, English, and yeah, keep on training. It's very if you're not getting a lot of French assignments, for example, how do you keep learning? How do you maintain your skills? Well, you have to do it by practicing, by listening to a lot of podcasts. And yeah, I do that.
I'll just answer to one question that we've got, and then I'll move on to other questions.
Yeah.
So, Eliana is writing, I would love to send me the conference if you register it. So, I'm just saying to everyone that this is registered, and we will publish it on our platform. So, no problem. And we got another question from Yeter that said, do you recommend master in translation and interpreting? So I know that you've already answered it more or less, and you recommended your university, which is in Barcelona, I think. And I don't know if you can recommend other masters or universities that you know.
Yeah. So, like, there are not many master degrees in conference interpreting. Like, for example, in Spain, I wouldn't like to be mistaken, but I can think about like 4 or 5 maybe. But I'm not sure. But the thing is that they are very very hard. They are very hard. You
So
need
it's
to
hard to get
work
in.
a lot. It's hard to get in. Yeah, it depends, but you need to take a test in order to get in which they are going to. They don't test if you are a good conference interpreter, of course, but they test if your skills can be, trained in order to become a conference interpreter. So yeah, they are very tough, and I recommend them 100% if you want to be a conference interpreter. For me, it's compulsory you do a master degree in conference interpreting, because as I said before, I was doing my degree, my 4 year degree. In Spain, is 4 years. In other places, it's less years or more years. But here is 4 years, the normal degree when you get out of school and you go to university. And I barely touched conference interpreting. I had one or two subjects, and then everything I learned was during my master's degree. And it's so hard that we start interpreting from Spanish to Spanish. And people find this very weird, but in order to master the technique, you need to start working from Spanish to Spanish, which is very odd. But this is just so that you understand how difficult it is to 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 start a master's degree in conference interpreter. You have to be very committed.
And what is the best advice that you would give to someone who wants to be a conference interpreter? You said networking. Maybe
Yeah.
you can expand on that, or maybe you have,
Yeah.
I don't know, advice
But
besides.
before the networking, I think the networking is something that comes afterwards, sort of. If you really want to become a conference interpreter, of course, you need to work a lot on your languages. Of course, that's the first thing. You need to be passionate about languages. You need to have this commitment to kind of get married to conference interpreting. I know it
Love the
sounds
expression.
it
Love the
sounds a
expression.
bit weird or strange, but in some way you are kind of married because you're very committed, and as I said before, you have to be up to date. You have to keep reading the news all the time because you never know what they're going to talk about in a conference. So yeah, like the first advice I would give is it is very difficult to become a conference interpreter. It takes a lot of training, but it is very rewarding. So the first advice I would give is if you like it, if you feel this is something in your stomach that you really want to do it, just go for it because it is very rewarding. You have a lot of fun. It's a very dynamic job. So, yeah, just go for it. And the second advice I would give you is do not compare yourself to no one because in conference interpreting we tend to like post on LinkedIn a lot. And it's sometimes hard to go on LinkedIn and start to see, oh yeah, this one interpreted for the king, this one interpreted for Bill Gates, this one and you're like, okay, I'm here sitting in my chair, in my couch, whatever. How do I start? It's very easy to compare yourself, but you just keep going because you if you're passionate about it, you'll find a way.
So we just got a question from Hamed who says, "What are the techniques that you usually use for handling situations where you do interpretation and encounter some words you do not know how to interpret?" That's a classic. That's a classic.
Yeah, that's a classic. I wish I could know how to answer this myself, but I still struggle. So okay, what are the techniques I usually use where okay. So first of all, when we're doing let's talk about simultaneous interpreting. Like for those of you who are not familiar, is like you put on the headsets, the microphone, and everything that comes in your ear in one language, you convey the message in another language in the microphone. So if you're doing that, it's real time translation. So, as Ahmed was saying, it is indeed very, very stressful. And the good thing is that you always work with a booth mate. So it is so exhausting, it is so tiring that you always have someone near you, and if it's remote you have him or her through the screen. But he's able to look up for different words that you might not know, and you're struggling. Maybe you're doing the interpretation and you're like blah blah blah, 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 and then you stop and the like your colleague somehow knows that you're struggling, and so he quickly, if he knows the word, he's writing the word for you straight ahead. And if he doesn't, he's looking it up for you, and you can look it up yourself. And sometimes what we do in the interpretation, like in simultaneous, is you don't say the word directly if you don't know it, and the colleague doesn't know it, and you sort of keep keep going. I don't know, I don't exactly know how, but you keep going, and then you kind of rescue that information and you put it, even if it's in a different order. It's very difficult, of course, because the speech keeps going and keeps going, and you haven't said that word yet, but you kind of somehow manage to put the word in, squeeze it in.
And speaking of not simultaneous but consecutive,
Yes.
you host a webinar with TranslaStars in a few days on note taking.
Yeah.
And can you explain why note taking is so crucial for interpreters?
So yeah, I'll be hosting this consecutive note taking and consecutive webinar, and I'm very excited about it. And it is important basically because when you start doing conference interpreting, when you start training, you start with note taking in consecutive. I was saying before that we usually do Spanish to Spanish. If you're a native in Spanish, of course, if you're an English native, you'll do English to English. And so the thing is that um, it kind of helps you to work on your memory a lot. And as I said in the description, in the webinar description, it is very difficult to hear his speech, if not impossible to hear his speech and write every single word that the speaker is saying. You need to develop a technique in which you're going to have to work on your memory, of course, but the notes are going to be a crucial tool to help you convey the message in a beautiful way, in an accurate way. And I think it's very good training all in all to start simultaneous. I wouldn't advise anyone to start simultaneous interpreting if they have not done consecutive. It certainly helps you a lot with your training in general, and it's beautiful and it's very creative. And yeah, what can I say?
I see that you're very excited,
I
so I'm very
am.
excited too.
I'm glad.
So, if there are some more questions, this is the time to write them. Otherwise, we are going to see Laura next week with the webinar, and we still have some places, so you can just enroll and join us next week on the 19th of October. And I see that there are more questions, I think. So I'll just thank you, Laura. You've been such a nice guest to interview, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Roberta. See you in the webinar.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.